Hello and welcome to Heineken Rugby Weekly on the 42.ie. A very happy new year to you. If it's your first time listening, every week we bring you behind the lines with expert analysis, tactical insights and engaging conversation around the international and club season. Our expert analysts will ask the hard questions and answer any you might have each Thursday. We'll also have a feature interview with some of the biggest names and most interesting characters in the game. Jordan Larmour joining us today. And if you want to get more from that game, join Heineken Rugby Club, whose members enjoy exclusive rewards like match tickets and more. Visit HeinekenRugbyClub.com and remember to enjoy Heineken responsibly and visit drinkaware.ie on how to do so. Gavan Casey here, and I'm joined in studio by Murray Kinsella of the 42.ie. Happy New Year to you, Murray.
Same to you.
And we're also joined by Andy Dunne, not of the 42.ie, but a regular here on the podcast. Happy New Year to you, Andy.
Happy New Year, Gav.
Thank you very much. All right, let's kick off. It's a big year.
Well, first of all, I want to hear what rugby-related Christmas presents you guys got. Any?
I got a Jurgen Klopp. That's sports-related. A Jurgen Klopp biography. No, he didn't write it. So what's that? Autobiography or biography?
Biography,
yeah.
Very good.
That's about as close to rugby as I got.
Good read?
I haven't read it yet. I haven't even opened it. I'm reading Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less by Jeffrey Archer, actually, at the moment. Which is unputdownable.
Nice.
Good luck.
Did you get sorted? Any rugby related?
I always get a few.
Merch?
The best one was it was actually really nice. My siblings got me, like, they printed out the photo of Jacob Stockdale as he goes to score against the All Blacks from overhead. You know, that really cool photo.
Oh yeah.
They got that printed out big, framed and all, so it actually looks really good. So I can't wait to have a nice house to put it in. But it's an amazing photo. It's by Tommy Dixon of Info. Probably one of the best sports photos of the year. So yeah, nice.
Definitely one of the best from last year. New Year's resolutions, while we're on the kind of topic of whimsical banter, it might be the only time we do this in 2019.
Rugby related or?
Not necessarily.
Well, we were just talking about the Blind Boy podcast before he came on, and he was talking about getting better sleep, so that's mine.
Okay, Andy?
Drink more Heineken Zero. Is that that's the non-alcoholic one?
Responsibly.
The Heineken
you
Zero.
can't be irresponsible with zero.
You cannot, yeah.
Fair play to you.
Bring the car to the pub.
Yeah.
Park outside, walk outside, get back in it and go home.
Yes, this podcast is not brought to you by My Taxi, thankfully. We have a lot of actual rugby to discuss. I suppose there's only one place to start, down in Limerick. There's so much to talk about from this game, I don't actually know where to start, but maybe in a kind of a wider sense to begin with, is the Munster-Leinster rivalry approaching something like its best again, do you reckon, Murray?
Yeah, well, certainly in the amount of chat around the game. Obviously, people were on holidays. A lot more people would have watched this game, but it's been, well, some of the chat has been about negative aspects of the game. It has been good that people have been talking about Munster and Leinster going at each other so hard. Once again, disappointingly, it wasn't about the rugby. It was about the probably off-the-ball stuff and the yellow cards and the red card as well. So maybe it's not back to its rugby best, but certainly the heat was there and certainly the engagement from supporters was there as well. So that's a really positive thing to see. I suppose if you're looking back to the heights of it, it depends on what point of view you're coming from. Like a Munster fan would say the best point was potentially, I don't know, Ron O'Gara handing off, was it Mal O'Kelly, and jumping over the hoardings into the crowd, and Leinster fan might say it's O'Driscoll picking off O'Gara's pass and going the length. So there's different viewpoints there, but certainly in terms of passion and I guess aggression, it was right up there.
Yeah, we'll be hearing from Jordan Larmour later on in the show. He does address some of Leinster's ill discipline as he perceived it. But Andy, I suppose the first half in particular kind of got a bit ugly at times. I think if you were to go back to, say, 2016 and that Ireland game against the All Blacks in Dublin, and we really went in on the All Blacks for some of their, let's say, overzealous approach that day, and yet when it's two Irish provinces going at each other, it's full-blooded and passionate. Even though a lot of it was quite reckless, you'd have to say.
Well, I think reckless from Leinster's point of view. I think Leinster started it. Leinster were the ones who I suppose, well, Sexton in particular with the scrum cap kind of slap in the face stroke, angry start to being. It was very, very borderline. Finian Wycherley was committed to the tackle, and Johnny took exception to it. Where I think that led his team, and he is the captain. I suppose he's a new captain, and he's always been an aggressive footballer. So he's you don't want to take that out of his game, because it's what drives him, and he doesn't want to take it out of his game, I'm sure, and neither do his coaches. But as a captain, I got the impression that some of his team then followed suit and said, well, we're going to row in behind our captain, who, whether they might have well been unsighted and saw Johnny, Finian Wycherley. If you turned around out of a ruck, Finian Wycherley at one stage looked like he was about to give Johnny Sexton a suplex, or it was like a WWF move, but they may have not seen what started, and in the heat of battle in a game like that, you may have turned around as a forward and looked at your captain being kind of dragged off the floor, because it was quite out of character, some of the things they did. I'm not saying they've impeccable characters and are a perfectly disciplined side, but out of character in terms of just naivety or stupidity. I mean, Scott Fardy's 35 caps for Australia, and he clotheslined the guy when he almost had a foot in touch about 20 yards out from their line. That was in no way thinking with clarity. Healy's high tackle, I suppose, was probably less hot-headed, yeah. And I think Furlong's, while there's much debate over the colour of the card, I don't think there was intent there. I think he looked to hit a ruck coming in from probably 5 yards away, with a Leinster player shielding the Munster guy who he was making contact with. At the last second, the Leinster guy got out of the way, and his shoulder made head contact. So there were mitigating circumstances in a couple of them. But yeah, it was fiery. I'd agree with Murray. If you turned the sound off and were from a different country and took all the emotion out of it, it was fairly turgid rugby, actually, for large parts. Leinster had a very good first 2 to 3 minutes, actually, where they seemed to just seamlessly get into their game, and then it all got a bit disrupted after that.
It was uncharacteristic, really, the whole thing from Leinster. Like, Johnny, part of his job is getting hit borderline and late. It happens every single time he plays.
Yeah. Every time he plays France, sure, it happens probably every 3 minutes.
He doesn't tend to react like that. Often he'll stay down injured because he's been hit so hard, his ribs are nearly broken or whatever, he's in pain, but he never really reacts that aggressively in that manner. His aggression is often when he's standing on his feet, maybe giving a bit of chat to the opposition, or in terms of his tackling technique, how he responds that way. That was an uncharacteristic reaction from him. And then all the stuff you've mentioned, like 14 penalties, is really sloppy, and you would not associate that sloppiness with Leinster.
They had 10 in the first 35 minutes, I think. Yeah, that's outrageous, that. For them anyway.
There's a question here from Owen OD16 on Instagram, and he asks, do you think Johnny Sexton's captaincy style is too confrontational?
Well, it was interesting that the first chat he had with Johnny said to Frank Murphy, you told me to be constructive.
Yeah. So
I don't know if Frank Murphy says that to every player. I'd love to find out. Every player before a game, be constructive with me, and don't I guess the connotation there is don't get in my face, don't be really aggressive with me, because I won't respond well to that. I don't think any referee really does respond well to that. Whereas it felt like Johnny was almost attacking him in that first instance, and then from there on the referee probably goes, okay, I'm not really going to listen to him much for the rest of the game, even though I felt Sexton in the rest of his dealings was actually quite measured, and he was trying to be quite logical. And you gave me a penalty for retaliation, where's the one here?
I think he is a bit passive aggressive even still. I mean, if you look at his body language with a referee, he was I'm trying to be constructive, biting his lip, looking like he wants to punch him. The referee can still see that, years ago, I remember, referees they're human beings, they're going to react to. I mean, Simon Keogh, he's the CEO of the Irish Rugby Players Association, and he's a legal background, so he's quite a diplomatic guy, but he was a scrum half. He played in Leinster and Harlequins, and I used to get a chuckle all the time. He would talk to referees, they come into the changing rooms, and he would bring up something the referee had done 4 games ago. Now, he hasn't studied the referee at all. He just said, I love the way you're refereing the scrum, I just want to have a quick chat about it. You could actually see the referee puff his chest out and go, this guy's been watching my videos, he thinks I'm great. And the reaction, he'd have the referee in his back pocket for 80 minutes talking in his ear.
Yeah, that's
the way to manage a ref. I think, when Johnny says, look, we talked beforehand, you told me or warned me to be constructive, I'm doing my best, but I'd agree with, is it Owen, his name?
Owen, yeah.
I think his style needs to dial down a bit and be a bit more diplomatic, even though it's not his nature.
It's not going to happen now, though, is it?
Well, I think if you're going to be a captain or a leader, I think you can. It's not like you can't. I'm not saying he should change his personality or his playing style or his aggression, but I think his captaincy is a new thing for him, and that's evolving, and he's going to learn as a captain as he goes. But I think he can learn to be more diplomatic, even if he doesn't like it. People can always learn to be like that. I think as a referee, you're going to respond to that. And unfortunately now, his reputation is getting ahead of him with refs, and he's building a wall for himself.
The referee's almost primed for what's coming. I actually remember it was a game against, I think it was Edinburgh earlier on this season, and Johnny Sexton was just being replaced after he took a conversion, but the referee came over afterwards and said, you ran that fine. It was nearly the time of the lapse, and the referee turns to run away, and Johnny Sexton, like, obvious expletive, you can't hear it on the ref mic, but tells him where to go. The referee continues to run. I don't know if he heard him or just decided, I'm just not going to deal with this, and you have Sean O'Brien kind of pulling Johnny off the pitch. And you're like, as a captain, you can't do that with referees. You're going to lose them, and then you're going to prime others to expect it to be the worst case scenario. Like, there's definitely a fine balance. It's a really tough job, like, and and trying to get on the good side at times doesn't work. You remember Rory Best being told, well, we're 30 seconds in the first half, of course everything's okay. Why are you asking me that? But other guys have kind of had to adapt, and Peter O'Mahony probably is one. When he was a young captain, he was probably a bit abrupt with referees at times, and maybe still is at times, but there is a time to go there. You can't be like that all the time. Yeah,
and similarly, you can't be diplomatic all the time. You can't be cool, calm and collected in Johnny's defence. But I just think, there's like you just said, there's a healthy balance, as with all these things, but particularly in any kind of relationship under the spotlight it was under. I think he was just a bit too far in the red, as it were, to coin the phrase. But I must say, I thought for a guy who played for Munster and played with and against other players, that I thought Frank Murphy did very well, in my opinion, particularly in that first 40 minutes, where every word is being listened to, every action is being scrutinised. I thought he communicated very well with his assistant and with Simon Wilkinson, and did his best with the players. Even for the furlong yellow, he explained why it wasn't a red. He explained why it was a yellow, and Stander, Sexton and Furlong hadn't an issue with it, because I think they all agreed on field how they saw it.
Yeah, and just on Sexton, I guess it was noticeable that there were uncharacteristic errors in his own game as well. He missed touch with his first penalty to put them in a really good position to get an early try. He put one of the restarts too long, scrum back. There was another decision-making kind of error when they were running a set-piece play, and normally he's brilliant at that. He goes inside to James Tracy when Jordan Larmour is screaming for the ball with a bit of an overlap on the right edge. So it was interesting to see that, I suppose, dip in his game, which is very rare, in fairness.
Yeah, does that come down to just the nature of the game? Like, part of me was thinking maybe he considers this his last opportunity to play in Thomond Park. Like, he might not get another chance, and maybe it's just like, I want to stamp in these guys.
Well, it was his
figuratively.
It was his first game in Thomond for 6.5 years. Yeah, and he's never gone down there as a captain. And I know, traditionally, for a Dublin club going to Limerick, whether it's Old Belvedere going down to Young Munster or Leinster playing in Thomond Park, you're primed for managing the crowd. You're primed for managing the onslaught, inevitably. I mean, and I think he was going down as a captain thinking, we're going into Thomond Park, I'm not taking a backward step. I'm not going to let the crowd get into the referee's head. I'm going to be front and centre and take the fight to them, which is admirable as a leader. You need to be aggressive, but I think probably Ollie Campbell, the legendary Irish out half, used to always coin the phrase, particularly for young towns or for any out half, was heart in the fire and head in the fridge. And I think he had a bit of heart in the fire, head in the fire,
Yeah.
So I do think he was trying to lay down a marker in Thomond Park, Dublin team down in Leinster, down in Limerick, all the history, his captaincy for his first time, and probably was a bit too overly excitable.
It was interesting the way the second half went then, though. Like, the third quarter, Leinster started to get a bit of momentum back, even with 14 players. And, they missed that 5 metre line out. They overthrow about 60-minute mark, I think. And they had a lot of momentum at that stage. They'd built some nice attack, in fairness to them, with 14 players. It was interesting to see that it kind of swung that way. And obviously, Munster finished strong over the top in that intercept try. So there was a bit more rugby in the second half, certainly to sink the teeth into. But understandably, the first half has dominated the kind of debate.
Yeah, very briefly, just to tie off that game, did we learn much about either team? Like, for as much as it was a fantastic win for Munster on paper, I wouldn't have said that they played out of their skins necessarily, or at least they didn't kind of put anything together that we haven't seen in the past few weeks. They just kind of toughed it out and probably just about edge a physical battle against 14 men.
Yeah, well, I suppose we learned Munster can respond to pressure. They lost a key game in Castres. We learned that Joey Carberry can respond to pressure and showed resilience in his plate kicking game because he missed crucial kicks in Castres and nailed all his kicks in Thomond. What we've probably chatted, there's been a lot of focus on Leinster and Sexton and indiscipline, where Munster made, it looked actually borderline accidental, made the only line break of the first half off a line out, but it was a nice idea, a nice set piece play, and they showed that they could cut Leinster off first phase, which is a positive for them. And the only question mark in their attacking game I'd have is that when Leinster were down to 13 men and they had a penalty in midfield, they took a kick to the corner, and that's where you'd like to see Conor Murray and Joey take a bit of executive control, because 13 men for Leinster, they would have had to take off one of the props. They would have had to bring on Michael Bent, who would have had to stay on for the next 8 minutes. He's not the best all-round field player. They would have to lose a back row, and James Lowe was off the field, and it was a midfield scrum. So if you set up appropriately in attack against that, you actually ought to score. It's harder not to score in that setting. And I was really surprised. Yeah. I mean, you're essentially going to the line out to surrender possession to see if you can win it back. Now they got a penalty and they kicked it, but it wasn't a smart decision. And I think
they should surely have a play in their playbook. Like if you're against 14 players, I know a lot of teams do. They have a play.
Absolutely,
we've seen it multiple times this season. Yeah. Scarlets have done it well. Leinster have done it a couple of times. You should probably have a play. If we have 13 against us, we're 5 metre scrum out or 10 metre scrum. This is the play we use.
Yeah, and it's an eventuality that's probably going to happen. Certainly 14 men regularly in modern rugby. 13 less common, but to go back to a line out when you're playing against 13 men with an option for a midfield scrum was really odd. And you want to convert in that 10-minute period. You got to be getting a minimum of 10 points. And it didn't cost them the result in the end. They actually got 6 points. So arguably we're splitting hairs, but two kicked penalties in that period. But I'd like to see them being a bit more constructive in that setting, and that comes down to a game management thing or a game awareness thing, both for Conor Murray and Joey, and obviously O'Mahony wasn't on the field, but maybe CJ, senior players to recognise that, you know.
And their attack probably just needs that big moment, doesn't it? Like Earls makes that line break and Haley's outside and doesn't pass. It was a difficult pass. Now in fairness, he glanced first and Haley wasn't beyond James Lowe. I think that's why he hung on to the ball. And Andrew Conway was 5 metres out, kind of throws a loose offload after some really good build-up play. I think it just needs that moment to click, and then the confidence across the board goes up, and then they feel confident in what they're trying to do in attack.
I think Chris Farrell coming back in, if he can remain injury-free, will have a huge impact on their attacking game. I know Goggins a good player, and he's a better passer than this incident, but he, left field scrum, they didn't have an overlap as such, but they had space in front of them, and he threw it off his left hand straight into touch. And they're the type of plays Chris Farrell is making regularly with ease, also attracting defenders by his running lines. So I think having a distributor and ball carrier of his quality out in the wider channel is going to really help break up their attacking game.
Now, a reminder, if you want to get more from the game, join Heineken Rugby Club, whose members enjoy exclusive rewards like match tickets and more. Visit HeinekenRugbyClub.com and remember to enjoy Heineken responsibly and visit drinkaware.ie on how to do so. Our interview this week is with Leinster's Jordan Larmour, who touched upon that game down in Thomond Park, as well as what's been a fairly remarkable year for him, or what was in 2018, and what promises to be a very exciting year this year as well. So we started by asking him just how sore the body was after that trip to Limerick.
Yeah, there's always a bit of niggle between Leinster and Munster, these big derby games. But yeah, the body was pretty sore after it. We probably didn't have our best performance. We pride ourselves on our discipline, and we let ourselves down at times throughout the game. I know, giving away that many penalties to a team like Munster, they'll rip you apart. So, we had a review on Monday and we went through it and see where we can get better. You know, there's a few key moments in the game where we didn't get right and put ourselves on the back foot. So yeah, you know, we'll take the learnings from that game and kick on for Ulster this week.
What were the key moments that jumped out that maybe didn't go your way then?
There's not really anything that jumps out. It's just kind of making error and then making another error, compounding them, and then just discipline, giving away penalty after penalty. You know, it just gives teams belief into games. So it's just kind of stuff like that. You know, there was one instance where we could have had an exit, and then the decision got reversed, and they got a penalty and scored off it in the game. So those kind of decisions, you know, those kind of errors that we made throughout the game, you know, didn't help us, and you know, at the end of the day, it cost us.
How tough is a review on a Monday after a defeat like that? Like, is it torturous sitting through the areas in which a game got away, or has enough time elapsed by the Monday that you can kind of be relaxed about it?
Yeah, I think, you know, those reviews, you got to be honest with yourselves, and you know, we talked about what we needed to do and get better. You know, everyone was probably still pretty disappointed with the performance, but yeah, you know, you got to take the learnings and move on. You know, there's another game this week, so you can't be dwelling on last week. You know, you got to kick on, and you know, good 2 days training on Monday, Tuesday. So you know, we're up for this game this Saturday.
The first half in particular probably went literally over the top on a couple of occasions. In the past, I think of the example of Ireland against the All Blacks in 2016 in Dublin. We were probably accusatory towards the All Blacks of being overzealous, over physical, and maybe bringing a level of intensity that almost doesn't belong in the game. Whereas Munster and Leinster, when that happens or something similar happens, it's described as full-blooded and passionate. Was there any point where you're looking at it going, you know, maybe this one has gone a bit far?
I don't know, like both teams were really passionate, and, you know, we wanted to play well, and like both teams were up for the game. You know, and that stuff can happen at times. I don't think anyone planned it to happen. You know, it just kind of happened, and you get on with it. I don't think there wasn't too much in them off the ball stuff or anything like that. It was just a bit of pushing and shoving, but I think it just brought out the passion, you know, and I don't know, it's probably about channeling that emotion and not letting it overtake you and then affect your decision making. So probably just channeling your emotion and just trying to, you know, keep a cool head at times, you know, because there's times throughout that game where we probably didn't keep a cool head, and you know, we give away penalties and they grow into the game.
Do you lose your head slightly in a game like that because of the rivalry, because it's Munster?
Yeah, maybe just the passion that we had, and I suppose just being up for the game, and just, you know, because you're playing against players that you're competing with, so you want to play well, you know, and maybe that had an influence in it. But yeah, I think it's important. I think we'll learn from it that, you know, we can't get too hot-headed. We got to stay calm, stay cool, stay collected, and just stick to the process.
You're also playing against some people who you know very well, which I presume then brings its own dynamic.
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's kind of weird at times playing against, because you play with them, and then you know how they play and the style they play, and you know, maybe sometimes you might overthink that and try to play differently or try something new just to get one up on them or something. But I think it's important just to do your own thing, stay in the process, and I suppose when you're playing against them, you're not thinking, oh, we're friends here now. You're enemies, but then once the game's over, you know, you can laugh and joke about it, and you're back to normal. But you know, once you're in the moment, you're playing, you're not thinking, oh, we're friends off the pitch here. You're just thinking about your job, your role, and then, you know, when the game's over, you can laugh and joke about it, what went on, and but yeah, I suppose it's there is rivalry between the two teams, and you know, you want to be playing or try and play better than your opposite number, because you're competing with him for an Ireland spot. So yeah.
You say you might try something different to get the better of a player you know well, but have you noticed then, given that there's now more footage of you, more knowledge of you, that defenders might have a better idea of what you might try to do versus even a year ago?
Maybe, like, you know, like when I'm getting ready for a game, you know, I'm studying my opposite numbers, seeing what they like to do. So it's probably the same for everyone, you know. Anyone who's playing against someone, they're going to study them, see what they do differently, and see how they like to play, what foot they kick off, what foot they step off, what arm they carry in. So, like, you study your opposition. So, yeah, maybe that's more footage of me now. People are studying me more, but, you know, all I'm going to try and do is just keep doing what I'm doing, keep trying to get better, keep trying to improve, you know, and just keep trying to play well.
Where does your fleet footwork actually come from? Is it something that like you would have worked on relentlessly, or is it a more innate talent? Like, does it stretch back to childhood?
Yeah, I think so. When I was growing up, I was always quick and always had good footwork, and you know, like it's the part of the game that I really enjoy, is running with the ball, attacking. So, you know, just trying to keep practicing the skill and keep trying to get better, maybe keep trying to get quicker, you know, just kind of stuff like that. But like, yeah, that's always the way I've played the game, is trying to step people, and yeah, it's good fun. It's what I enjoy.
And is that something you would still practice then, you know, stepping people and just that footwork that we're talking about? Or at a certain point, do you just retain the ability where it comes naturally to you and you don't necessarily need to work on it day in, day out?
Yeah, so it's kind of always been there for me, but like, I suppose you would always be practicing it when you're training. You know, we'd always talk about using footwork to try beat defenders. So like, even when you're not thinking about it, when you're out there training, you're using footwork. And I suppose that's playing a part. You're practicing the skill, you're getting better at it. So yeah, it wouldn't be something I think about too much. It comes naturally to me. But yeah, I presume I would always be practicing it, because like when you're training, you're using footwork. And even after training, you might do a few one-on-ones with someone just for a bit of fun, see if you can catch them out. So yeah, I would practice it.
So looking at the season as a whole for Leinster then, you know, you're the team to beat in Europe, really. There's a target on your back. That strikes probably as the biggest challenge, in that everybody wants to kind of knock you off your perch, so to speak. But does that then require a change in anything from your perspective, whether it's training or your mindset or something like that?
Yeah, I think, you know, once you get that taste of success, you just want more and more and more. So, you know, everyone's hungry, everyone wants to win. You know, we talked about at the start of the year that we are the champions, but we're going to go take the 2 trophies, we're going to go attack them. We're not going to sit back and let someone come up and get them. So, you know, having that attacking mindset and that winning mindset, I think is really important. And I think that drives our standards and drives our complacency. You know, because the standards that we set for ourselves individually and collectively are really high, and you know, you're disappointed if you don't meet those standards. So I think that drives your performance, and the way you play and the way you think. So I think, yeah, I think having a winning mentality, and I think we have that, especially with the taste of success we got last year. So yeah, so we're looking forward to this season, and hopefully it can be as good as last.
So you're not defending the trophies necessarily, but you're challenging for them again.
Yeah, exactly. We're going out to win them. So we're not sitting back thinking we're the champions and someone has to come get them. We're thinking about going out and getting them.
Jordan Larmour there speaking at Energia Park, and Energia, the official energy partner of Leinster Rugby, have announced a multi-year partnership with Larmour. The long-term agreement allows Energia to deliver its vision through their new campaign, #The Power Behind Leinster, powering rugby from grassroots through to the European stage. We've got a lot of questions, very good questions on Instagram this week, and we need to give away a copy of Behind the Lines number 2. So let's do that. We already had a very good question from Owen O'Deeve, who was asking about Johnny Sexton's captaincy style. Here is one from Queeveen O'Madigan on the topic of Munster in particular. He asks, what has happened to the Munster Academy? Far too many non-Munster players in the squad. Might start with yourself, Murray. Any thoughts?
I suppose we've touched on this earlier on this season about how probably the schools and clubs environment in Munster, both by population numbers and by the quality player coming through, haven't quite provided as many there. I would say if you look at the current crop and guys who are coming through like Fineen Wycherley, Gavan Coombs, both from West Cork, that's a really exciting development for Munster. There has always been a hope to get more from the whole province rather than just Limerick and Cork, which have traditionally provided the massive bulk of the players. So I think that's a really positive development. You've seen guys like Sweetenham and others. Liam Coombs is another one coming through in that sense. Again, Waterford is probably a place they can tap into a little bit more. Those other areas of the province are going to be really important. I think the thing is, Munster are aware that they need to keep pace with Leinster's rate of developing players and the quality of player that's coming through. So that's the standard bearers. Now they do have the advantage of population of essentially 10 or 12 academies in the school system, as we've mentioned here before as well. So it's tough to keep pace with that. I do think that Munster have been a little bit more focused on how they're doing it. They've been probably a little bit more cutthroat in the last couple of years. You know, they released 7 players at the end of last year straight out of the academy and kind of moved on with a new batch. But yeah, I think it's fair to pose the question. I don't think they're going to be quite at Leinster's level, but I think that's understandable given those factors we mentioned.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Andy? We've probably mentioned before as well, I suppose, on the flip side of it, how Leinster are becoming the benefactors of an extremely productive school system as well as the clubs. But I suppose one of the questions I'd always wonder about is how Leinster have kind of pulled away in recent years versus what it would have been like in, say, the mid 2000s. Like the population there's always been a disparity in population, but it just seems as though structurally Leinster is a lot more sound, a lot more productive than it is down south.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose an example I could give is working as a physio, and about a year and a half ago I somehow ended up covering a Castleknock College under 13s rugby match out in Castleknock as a favour to a friend, and it was Castleknock against I think it was King's Hospital, relatively local schools under 13 game, A's, B's, C's and D's, 4 pitches, few parents around, and two guys in big Leinster managers jackets with an iPad. And I walked over to them and I said, "Are you guys just wearing, 2 parents who are wearing Leinster jackets?" And they were like, "No, we're here watching." And I couldn't get over that. That was just a friendly Wednesday afternoon fixture between 2 schools, and they obviously have the resources and they can employ people to do that or pay people to do that, or they have incredibly generous volunteers, one or the other. But that type of attention to detail at that level is probably why they're converting what they always had population wise into success. I don't know, I'm ignorant to what Munster are doing in a similar vein, but if you look, as Murray mentioned, you look at the greater size of the province, and traditionally they've got their players from Limerick and Cork cities, really. So you look at, say, Water Park over in Waterford, you're looking at Glenstal winning the Senior Cup last year. They're positives, they're great positives. That's probably once in a lifetime cycle in a small boarding school like Glenstal, but it's still great to see that younger players from different origins are being successful at underage level, and hopefully they can tap into it. And
Glenstal have got like Ben Healy's a very exciting prospect now in the academy, good out half. It's interesting that the kind of director of rugby in Glenstal is Sean Skeen, who's the brother of Andy Skeen in St. Michael's, and they've done a lot of the same thing. They play a similar style. Obviously Sean's got his own ideas in the game as well, but there's been a bit of an overlap there, and obviously Glenstal, it's pretty expensive to go to that school, so therefore there's possibly a little bit more money for the rugby budget as well. I think just on the scouting thing, like Munster are obviously looking at players. It's been interesting to speak to a couple of schools and clubs coaches who maybe have been aggrieved that their young player hasn't been pushed on into the academy. Now that's always going to happen no matter where you are. But I guess one of the perceptions over the last couple of years has been that Munster have always been looking for almost a specific type of player. That obviously makes sense because you have a certain way, an identity you want your province to play to, but others have perceived it as overlooking maybe a talented smaller winger or someone in the back row who doesn't have Peter O'Mahony's leadership qualities or that same personality. So that's probably been a learning for Munster, I would say, on the inside, that in how to identify players and understand the different rates of progress as well, because a guy who's training twice a week with his club is obviously going to struggle to be as developed as a guy who's in a really good schools program that's training every day. I probably had that experience myself coming from Waterford, from a good school in Newtown School where I played a lot of rugby, but I always felt, oh my God, I'm years behind these guys from Prez and from Christians or whatever it was. So there's probably been that understanding as well, and trying to help bring more guys through at a younger age so that they don't feel that I guess that gap when they're in the under 18s, under 19s environment as well.
There's a really interesting thing you touched on there, is when you consider like great academies and great, like you think of Ajax over in Holland and Barcelona with La Masia, and they've got a very clear philosophy and style of play that they feed in. Now they've got amazing systems, but one leads to the other. It's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. They know what they want to do with their academy, and they shape kids that way. They find kids who are suitable to play a certain style, and they start using the sieve at a very young age in terms of who gets through, who's suitable to the style of play they want to play down the line. Now I was asked earlier in the week, are Munster back because they beat Leinster? And I suppose my answer question with a question like a true politician, but I was like, back to what? Like, are they back to being like they were when they won European Cups? No, because I don't think they've got the same leadership and experience throughout the team. No, because they don't have an out half who runs the game by smart territorial kicking. So if they want to return to the successful times of old, it's not going to happen with this group. So they either get on with it and say we're going to play differently and embrace that. How then the Munster Academy works is like what is Munster's identity and style of play currently? Because certainly their traditional style of play is something that's very immediately recognisable. You know, a Munster side of old, which was dominant up front, excellent set piece, you know, incredibly aggressive around the ruck, and a very strong territorial game between their 9 and 10, and probably less creative out wide. That could be all I suppose unfair generalisms, but that's how they won a lot of their games. That's not going to happen with this team, not with Joey Carberry at 10, for example. So then if they say we've got a discernible style of play for now, is that how we're going to play into the future? Is that how our academies are going to identify players? And at the moment, that's all a bit unidentified and a bit of a mishmash down in Munster. Whereas I think in Leinster, you have a very clear idea what their philosophy and how they're trying to play. And that filters down to the under 10s and the Castleknock College under 13s, you know. So
going back a couple of years, I remember a couple of friends of mine would have played in, say, with the Munsters 17s or 19s it could have been at the time, and a few of them were on the same team or in the same setup as Ultan Delan, and they were telling me once like just what an absolute freak of a man Delan was in terms of his athleticism, like some of the hits he'd be putting in, obviously his ball carrying ability, but that he was almost seen as a kind of a quieter guy from the country in a way. Like he would come up, he wouldn't be necessarily vocal at all, just a kind of a quiet, friendly guy. But what Munster were trying to do at the moment, or at least the impression that they got, was that it was like you can turn a leader into a player, but you mightn't necessarily be able to turn a player into a leader. And they were looking for these big characters, and not necessarily, maybe we're overlooking some talents on the basis that, well, he's not going to be barking orders or necessarily a colossal figure in the dressing room. And like Delan was just kind of allowed to go. And I think that was maybe symptomatic of them having this idea of the type of character they want in the squad, and maybe that has changed, but I think you're right. Like I don't know if they actually kind of quite know what they're looking for at the moment. And obviously, but it's interesting to say with the guys from, say, Fineen Wishley being from Bantry, like clearly they have stretched the net out, and it might just develop over the next couple of years.
There'll be many more examples. Like Shane Daly's a guy who's been involved with the Sevens recently, probably would be on a development contract this season if not for that, I think. And there's certainly more talent coming through. If you watch the Ireland under-20s in spring in the Six Nations, there'll be quite a few Munster guys there. They played 2 friendlies over Christmas against Leinster development and against Munster development. And like the likes of Jonathan Wren, Sean French, really exciting Munster backs, Craig Casey, scrum half. So there is a lot of talent there. I think people will probably appreciate that a little bit more. Like, it's not long ago, it's only months ago, we were talking about Ulster's Academy producing nothing, and now they're starting to get quite a few of them through. Like, it is an IRFU run model. The academies are essentially, they're all IRFU employees, obviously, and they're all operating with very, very similar systems as well. So it's just about I guess matching Leinster.
I think just there's one glaring area where Munster have really, I think, been damaged, is that the IRFUs, they've dismissed club rugby. They have. And club rugby was the bedrock of Munster's success. Shannon, Cork-Con, Shannon would have 9 All-Ireland leagues, and most of that Shannon team were that Munster pack. And I played a game, I coached in a game last year, the day of Sexton's drop goal in Paris, and All Belvo against UL. So you take into account we had there was 20 All Belvo squad, 5 or 6 support staff and supporters. There's probably 50 odd people involved from our club, and about 50 from UL. That's 100. There was 10 teams in every league, and all 5 leagues played at 2:30 or 3 o'clock on the same Saturday. Ireland were playing in Paris, and I think it was one of the most dismissive things you could see from an IRFU management point of view, where they've got weekends from September to April. If you take the 12 weeks of summer off, you're still down to 40 weeks of the year to play 18 matches, and they still pick games on the day of an international. And they've dismissed club rugby out of hand. Now, Munster, you can argue all the reasons they've put money into academies and all the rest. Joey Carberry didn't get into the Leinster Academy. He went to Clontarf and he played club rugby, and he got recognised by playing brilliant club rugby, went to Leinster and now ends up in Munster. Dan Carter didn't get into one of his academies in Canterbury. So to dismiss people who don't get into academies and not invest in club rugby is a huge miss for IRFU, and it's had an effect on Munster rugby, and it's had an effect on the culture down there. It's not as formidable a place to go and play club rugby anymore. You know, Dublin players used to shit themselves going down there because they knew they were going to get a really torrid time, and it was without doubt a dominant place. Now you look at club rugby, and again, clubs with more money and more resources like Clontarf and Lansdowne are fairly dominant, and Cork-Con have held their own, and a great credit to that club for doing it. And they have an amazing system themselves, coming through from under 5s, you know, all the way up, and that's why they're doing it. But overall, to think how Munster rugby can match the resources and power and population of Leinster without access to a well managed club system is a bit of a joke in my mind, and I think that's an IRFU problem. It's not a Munster issue.
We need to talk about the other 2 provinces, of course, and they're two. It was actually, I mean, it's an interesting one, that game between Connacht and Ulster, in the sense that, again, we probably saw there's something a little bit exciting building in Connacht, and then you'd probably have to ask the question, you know, how did Ulster kind of drop off again? I might start with the first one then, about the victors. Like, Connacht can start getting really excited, I think, can't they?
They've got a lovely bit of momentum now, and it's kind of like a quiet momentum. No one in Connacht is getting too excited, but there's a lot of belief in what they're doing, and it does almost have a little bit of a feel about that Pat Lam season when they kind of started picking up momentum, and you go, okay, I need to keep an eye on that. And every time you watch them, the performance is consistently good, so that gives you belief that this is very real. It's definitely been a resurgence, and I think it was interesting that they physically overpowered Ulster, who were poor in that department. Like, there's obviously 2 sides to the coin, but Connacht were extremely aggressive in contact. You saw their close range mauls, some clever stuff at the line out, and then their kind of pick and drives for the Della Hunt try. Even Aki's directness for his score as well. And on top of that, something that was really good was like how they exited their half. Like, Jack Carty's kicking was absolutely brilliant yet again. He's kicking a lot of ball. I think only Sam Davies has kicked more than him in the Pro 14 this season. He's kicked 200 times, but there's real length in his exiting kicks. There's real composure in how they're actually building to that point where he's in a good position to kick right side of the pitch with a good angle at the touchline, and that was consistent throughout the game. So I think it's been interesting to see that those things are almost becoming strengths, and those were things that they identified at the start of the season as wanting to be strengths. So it is a little bit different to maybe Pat Lam's wide. There is still real quality in Connacht's attack as well. I think set piece wise there under Nigel Carolan, there's some really clever ideas. We saw it against Leinster the week before where there was heartbreak at the end, but a really good performance up until that point. And again, Carty showing his creative side in that game. On top of that, you've got a lot of players who aren't involved with the Ireland squad. Obviously Bundy and Marmion and a couple of others will be in the squad again in Six Nations time, but there's guys like Gavan Thornbury, who was in an Ireland squad, is on Joe Schmidt's radar. Sean O'Brien, who's definitely on Joe Schmidt's radar and is very close to being in a wider involvement in November. Even Quaylen Blade now is really coming into his own. Obviously Carty. Across the squad, there's a lot of good individuals who have stepped up massively this season and seem really content under Andy Friend and really buying into what he's driving in the province as well. And most encouraging, they're doing what they said. Accuracy and physicality were the two big things, and tempo at the start of the season, and all three of them are very identifiable in their actual game plan. It's pretty simple, but being done really effectively with a good skill level that we would have associated with Connacht. So yeah, I think there's definite cause to be excited, and certainly there's definite evidence to show that they've improved this season.
Yeah. What about Ulster then, Andy? I suppose the question is why the drop off after kind of European duty, because they had built the momentum that we'd spoken about a couple of weeks ago, and maybe they could have really sustained that with victory there in against Connacht, but just didn't quite come to fruition.
Well, undoubtedly they've improved. As a general comment overall, and great to see them playing so well in the back-to-back European games pre-Christmas. I think when you're a young or new team with a relatively young and new head coach and they're trying to play a different way, there's going to be lack of consistency, because they're kind of finding their way in the dark. And I suppose if I was an Ulster supporter looking at that, I'd be positive and patient. And I think, okay, dips in form, they definitely don't have strength in depth relative to other provinces. They really don't. They're quite exposed actually when they go, when you scrape the surface and go one or two lower. So yeah, I think that all adds up to an inconsistency in the results that's probably true to their form. But I think the highs have been a big plus for them. Those big moments, the back-to-back Scarlets games, they're huge for the province, and they were big wins for Don McFarlane too, as a relative novice as a head coach in his first year. But overall, I think there's been a positive first half of the season for Ulster. I think they would walk away from it and probably would haven't been offered that in August. I think they would have taken it.
I think your point about squad is so relevant there. We're seeing probably the results of bad management over the last couple of years. Like, it hasn't just been Ulster on the pitch, it's been Ulster off the pitch. Some poor recruitment. You're seeing Dan McFarlane ship out players out of contract early. A couple of guys have retired. You don't know whether they were almost encouraged to. He's changing the squad very quickly, and there's going to be massive work to do there. Like, I think one of the things we've seen with Leinster this season is the value of that middle tier of players. We often get kind of distracted talking about the young guys coming through. Wow, he did brilliant. But who are the men around him on the pitch, the players around him on the pitch, making his life a little bit easier, allowing him to show his skills? I think they're likes of Ross Maloney in Leinster, James Tracy, guys like Scott Fardy as well, who's always there when the internationals are rested or away. Those kind of players are so important. Even your Michael Bent, someone who's just going to be consistent, solid, is going to give a good platform for the young guy coming into the team to shine. And Ulster maybe don't have as strong a middle tier. Probably none of the other provinces do. Connacht are probably benefiting from having guys who aren't going to be away in international camp. They can play everyone all the time. The minutes are really high. But I think with Ulster, they're missing that kind of solid middle tier that when Rory Best and Ian Henderson, for example, aren't on the pitch, it's not as aggressive, it's not as focused, it's a little bit more frantic, and you can still see some of the good elements in their play, but it's just missing that kind of composed touch. Like against Munster at home, the Interpro they did win, like Rory Best comes off the bench and uncharacteristically throws two pretty special passes, one offload, one kind of pre-contact little flick as well, just to kind of change the game, and they've definitely missed Ian Henderson's utter aggression, and that just sets a tone, and just we're talking about Leinster losing discipline. That was almost like a chain reaction. It starts with one bad decision and it's just infectious through a team. So is a big moment in contact or a composed moment of skill. That's really infectious as well. And I think the challenge for McFarland, and actually not just him, just for the province, is recruiting really well with good personalities and guys who are going to be durable and fit all the time to step into those roles when Best or Henderson or whoever is away. Can
you foresee them making a lot of recruitments, or is it a case of, say, for example, what you say there about they've got the kind of like the bona fide international guys, then they've got a lot of youngsters without necessarily a strong middle tier. Can you recruit and fill the middle tier, or do you wait for some of those younger players to kind of develop further and become a middle tier of sorts?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a question for Ulster. That's a decision they've got to make. I would guess that McFarland will be pressing very hard, and certainly it sounds like there's going to be a few new faces over next summer. Certainly there is great young talent there. Like there's exciting players coming through, and even someone like Robert Balakoon, who's played the sevens, then comes in, had obviously that unfortunate rash decision early on against Munster, but he's got a lot of talent. Michael Lowry has featured really impressively. The young props are getting exposure. Tom O'Toole and Eric O'Sullivan coming from the IEL, 23-year-old, but now getting a chance to play. So it is exciting. There's a guy, Eric Sullivan, who they're almost becoming reliant on now and is actually stepping up to it as well. So that's encouraging, that with opportunity some of those guys are really starting to impress. But I think McFarland, with the harsh realities of professional rugby, will be pressing very hard with his new CEO for a few signings this summer.
We'll look ahead to the two interpros this weekend then, and it's time to resume your vicious rivalry from last year, gentlemen. Of course, we know exactly what the score is, and everybody who listens to the podcast knows as well. We'll start counting this year. I think you deserve a clean slate.
This is the new quiz.
New year, new us. New year, new us.
We need to clarify what, like, this weekend's predictions. Is it just win, or is it?
I think I don't know.
We could get very complicated. Let's just keep it straightforward.
Keep it simple. No one cares, really.
Exactly. Not even us.
Leinster host Ulster.
Yeah,
and they're looking to. Leinster are looking to. Both teams are looking to bounce back from defeat, but you'd probably think that the greater onus in a way is on Leinster.
You would, certainly, and I think it's an important fixture for Ulster for some of those reasons we mentioned. Like, it looks like they're going to have a weakened team. Certainly some of the likes of Cooney and Jordy Murphy are off on holidays. Maybe Best will feature. We don't quite know yet at the time of recording, but they went down to Thomond Park with a weakened team earlier on the season and got obliterated and showed none of the stuff that Dan McFarland has talked about putting into their game. So I think it's a really important fixture for them, even if they don't win or threaten to win, that performance is there, and there's all that fight for inches, all those little bits, as well as all the technical stuff that they've done well against Scarlets, that we see signs of that. I think it's an important fixture for them.
Yeah, even in defeat, I suppose, Andy, we can learn a lot about Ulster this weekend, in that if they go to Leinster with a weakened team and put up a kind of a display, it will be a sign of market progress, actually, compared to what went on in Thomond a few months back.
Yeah, I'd say Dan McFarland has probably been chatting to his own management this week, probably from a reassurance point of view, probably working together to say, look, let's go down there and put on some kind of a battle that we can claw in there. I think if they lose by less than 15 to 20 points, they'd be probably delighted. I'm never going to say that in public, but with a weakened side going down to Leinster, who no doubt I would say were dragged over the coals this week by Lancaster and Cullen for the lack of discipline they showed, for losing away from home. They're not a group or a professional organisation who take losses kindly, which is great obviously for them. But I that would be ominous for a weakened Ulster side travelling down to Dublin. So I think McFarland and his management they've probably given Dan a bit of a kind of a pass on this one and say, look, just let's get out of there alive and respectably and get back to our work in Europe.
Get in and get out. So Leinster wins for both of you. Bonus point win?
Yeah.
Okay, Connacht and Munster then. Interesting game. Very interesting game.
Great game. Like, Connacht are just behind Munster now in Conference A, and with a win they can jump above them into second in the conference, which is really remarkable and has happened kind of quietly, as we said. So it's a really big day for a sold out sports ground, which is really exciting again. I'd say they can't wait to even expand that stadium, which is coming down the line, and really exciting for the province. But It would map off, I think, probably the most impressive Interpro campaign of the 4 provinces if Connacht can get this win. You'd imagine that Andy Friend, as we said, he doesn't have a lot of Ireland internationals, so he will be able to obviously play a strong hand, while obviously there's going to be an inevitable bit of rotation. But I think that they will be certainly eyeing this as a chance to make a real statement and move into second in the conference.
Do you think they will make that statement?
I do. I think they'll win.
I agree, yeah.
Happy New Year to you, lads. That was great.
Well, here's to a good year ahead.
Yes, indeed. We need to pick a winner for the book as well, a copy of Behind the Lines #2. So just a reminder of what the questions were. Owen OD 16, do you think Johnny Sexton's captaincy style is too confrontational? And Queeveen O'Madigan, what has happened to the Munster Academy? Far too many non-Munster players in the squad. There were also really good questions from Muir Foynes, C. McIntyre 1986, Charlie _Kennedy 1. Sorry we didn't get to those, but we will hit us up again next week and we'll sort you out.
Is Owen OD age 16 or is that just his name on the Instagram?
It's his. Sorry. Are you Owen OD, 16?
Yeah.
No, it's his
Okay.
name on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he may also be 16.
Well, he should.
He could be
should
a
get the- If
replacement
he is
prop-
16, he
he
should
could-
get the prize.
Yeah, I
be a
think it was a good
replacement
question.
hooker
It
as
was a
well.
good question. We'll
It
probably
is.
come back to some of those issues as well.
It's a
You
very
could-
mature question
yeah.
if he's 16.
Yeah.
It's probably the best
You could
question I've
spend-
heard from a 16-year-old in a long time, actually. So fair play to you, Owen. And I hope you had a great Christmas. It's about to get a lot better. Christmas is still happening until the 6th, isn't it? Right. That's all we've got time for. Thanks a million, gents. Murray and Andy. We'll see you
Thank
again
you.
next week, please, God.
Cheers, Gav.
And a reminder that if you want to get more from the game, join Heineken Rugby Club, whose members enjoy exclusive rewards like match tickets and more. And remember as well to drink Heineken responsibly and visit drinkaware.ie on how to do so. Thanks a million for your questions and for tuning in this week. We will be back again next Thursday. Enjoy the last round of Interpros. And until then, take it easy.